Everybody, here we are in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada, as I recall, and we're here at MIX09, and we've got a special guest with ourselves. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Prashant Ketkar, and I'm the Director for Product and Field Marketing for Windows Azure.
Let me ask you this first. Every time I talk with Azure about people, they ask me how to pronounce it. So, is there one way, or do people pronounce it many different ways?
Well, it's interesting you ask that question. We would like people to pronounce it a certain way. We do realize that obviously, you can't tell the French how to pronounce it, since they own the IP on that word. But Azure is the right way.
Azure.
Yeah.
There we go.
That's the right way to do it.
So now that we know how to call it,
right?
Can you give us a brief overview of what exactly it is?
Yeah, I mean, Azure Services Platform is essentially a set of various composable elements that allow a developer to utilize these components or services to write rich applications and services. Right. So essentially, it is made up of Windows Azure, which is, metaphorically we refer to it as the operating system for the cloud, which we provide as a service. And then there are various sets of composable developer elements like SQL, like authentication, and service bus, and things like that. SharePoint and CRM that will come over a period of time.
Would you call it a platform as a service? I mean, is that?
Some parts of it certainly feel like a platform as a service. If you look at the Windows Azure layer particularly, which is this operating system as a service, it certainly feels more like a platform as a service versus a software as a service. Whereas when you go up the stack to the finished services layer with things like Exchange, where we provide hosted mailboxes, or SharePoint online, where we provide the rich experience and the collaborative things that we've done with SharePoint, it feels more like software as a service versus platform as a service. And over a period of time, the vast majority of those applications and services, other than at the platform level, will be written by our partners and by our ecosystem. Much like you envision the on-premises world today with Windows Server,
where there's a vast array of partners and third parties.
Correct,
like
absolutely. Somebody is writing a CAD application or service. Somebody is writing something for ERP or CRM. Right? We expect the exact same level of enthusiasm, same level of richness to the ecosystem around Azure Services Platform.
In the here and now, I mean, like you're saying, you want to get to the point where you have the same ecosystem of partners and everything that you have behind the firewall or on-premise.
Right.
And so, at the moment, with the different services that you have, like, what's your sense for, if I was sitting here and I was like, I want to develop on Azure, what would my experience be like? Like, how would I start out and what tools would I need?
Most of the tools that you would need are available off the Azure.com website. So essentially, Azure and Windows Azure is essentially made up of two things, right? It's the developer's paradigm, which is, the experience that you as a developer and the tools that you have as a developer to write your application or service. So we've done a ton of work today with Visual Studio and integrating Visual Studio experience with this cloud paradigm, so that you could take your skills as a .NET Visual Studio developer today on premises and bring it to the cloud. We've also added, today we announced support for Fast CGI, which allows you to take PHP as a programming language, which is not necessarily .NET, and bring that experience and that skill to developing to the cloud, right? And so it is that development experience which we will continue to do a ton of work around. And then it is the real cloud world, which is where you host your application or service. And that essentially is comprised of a massive scalable hosting platform with, metaphorically infinite capacity and capability that has compute and it has storage that allows you to, run compute applications or compute, think about an animation application, and you need massive capacity.
You need a lot of processors.
That's right. You need you need processing capacity to do rendering, as an example. Or you need storage. You're an insurance company and you want to store, 30 years worth of data. You have petabytes of storage on premises. Do you really want to keep all of that on premises and move some of it to the cloud? So you start to open up these these interesting scenarios and workloads that could that can today take advantage of the cloud. Particularly if you are a startup today, who in this economic time does not have the capital to invest in buying hardware.
It's interesting. It seems like compared to other cloud things out there, if you will, that you guys have a lot of emphasis on the developers versus sort of the more operational side of the house, if you will.
Absolutely, and it's one of the core tenets that we've had as we built out the platform. We focused on essentially two things. Like I said, it's been focused on totally frictionless developer experience to writing the app or service, and then a rich scalable hosting platform, which with service management that allows you to hide away a bunch of this complexity of having to deal with physical hardware. What happens if physical machine or a server fails? What happens if a storage disk fails? What happens if entire geo or an entire cluster caught fire because it overheated?
In discussing cloud platforms, one of the things I'm often curious about, and since you guys have a developer-centric approach to it, I'm curious how you guys are solving this problem. But it seems like a lot of the high scale and scalability-ness of the cloud might require mucking around with your application a little bit differently, or coding your application in a different way than you would expect if you had a dedicated server, for example. And I wonder how, with Azure, I don't know how people can go through that change, or if that change is abstracted away for it.
Yes, I mean, fundamentally, when you're writing any application that requires you to be thinking about how it scales horizontally, you write stateless applications. So, at a principal design point level, you certainly want to be thinking about architecting applications a slightly different way. If you want to truly take advantage of the economic value of the cloud. If you're going to take your application that is running today in an on-premises environment, which is a stateful application, you've done a certain level of mucking around, if you may, and you take it to the cloud, you may not necessarily derive a ton of economic value out of it. You may be able to take away some of the operational hassle of having to manage the servers and all of that stuff, and move that hassle from on-premises to the cloud.
But quantitatively, you might have the same amount of hassle, just qualitatively it'll be different.
That's right. And it may end up costing you the same amount of money. So you fundamentally want to also educate the ecosystem that's out there that, hey, there is an economic value to the cloud. But you got to be conscious about how you write your applications and services to truly take advantage of that paradigm. We will certainly, over a period of time, enable people to simply take their application and migrate it to the cloud.
Sort of legacy migration.
That's right. Plonking. Yeah. Is it necessarily efficient? Well, maybe not.
Given that platform, where's Azure right now? You guys sort of announced it in the fall, and we're creeping up on spring here and everything. What's sort of the roadmap that you guys have for it?
One of the things, we're in the crawl, walk, run stage, right? So I would say we are in the walk phase right now of the crawl, walk, run phase. At PDC of 08, we announced the vision of what we are doing with the cloud, with Azure and Windows Azure in particular. And we announced opening of the platform in a community technology preview. Today at MIX, we've added the next set of enhancements to the Windows Azure platform particularly, as well as overall to the Azure Services platform. So we've added fast CGI support that I talked about, which opens up the platform to PHP folks and other
even Perl people.
That's right. Over a period of time, the premise is that it's an open platform that you can bring any scripting or programming language and be able to write your application or service. We've also announced today support for native code. We've announced support for full trust, which is essentially the way people typically write applications or services in their on-premises.
It sort of allows it to get outside of a sandbox approach.
That's right. And then we are also announcing support for geolocation functionality, which allows you to pick the data center location or the geographic location where your application or service should be. Over a period of time, as we get to summer, we will announce the next set of enhancements to the platform, along with the business model and the SLA before we get to commercial launch.
And those are of course the things everyone's eager to hear,
Absolutely.
Because so much of cloud computing is about the economics of it, like you're outlining.
Your spot summer, we'll provide people insight into that. That still gives them about 3.5-4 months before we hit the commercial launch time frame, so that people can start to run some analysis on where it makes economic value for them to run, what workloads and applications do they want to run on the cloud, and so on and so forth. And then, as you know, commercial launch is slated for second half of calendar year 09, towards the end of the year. And we are committed. This is the beauty of the services world is we're not in the monolithic 3-year shipping cycle release of a packaged product. We're shipping every day.
There's only one monolith to work on.
So we want to get to this paradigm where we are making improvements to the platform in a fast and rapid way that exposes new sets of functionalities and technologies to the developer and to the platform for the vast majority of users.
Well, great. It was great talking with you.
Same here. Thank you very much.